and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 326, and today's date is March 28th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The U.S. Atlantic Coastline Goes on High Alert to Cover Up This Entire Economic Collapse. And what are we talking about? We're talking about that missing Malaysian airline. We're talking about cyber attacks. We're talking about nuclear dirty bombs blowing up. We're talking about biological weapons throughout the country. And again, this is all being staged at this point to cover up this massive economic collapse. We can see over the last couple of weeks, all these indicators coming in are showing us that something is about to happen, and they're trying little false flags and little ways of trying to get into Syria. I believe this is their main objective at this point, and you can see that each time they do something, it does fail, and they will be left with nothing except to do something here on the United States, on the soil of the United States. And it seems like this is all they have left. Their backs are against the wall. Ukraine did not work out, and here we go for the next event. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in this report, but let's go through the economic collapse news. But before I get started, I just want to welcome all those people who subscribe to YouTube. If you haven't visited the X22Report.com site, you can come on over. I have many different tabs. I put up articles during the day. I comment on them. We have inflation, deflation. I just updated the graphs and everything today. And we have The People, which is the forum of like-minded people talking about the economic collapse and many other issues. And you can come on over. And also I have the economic collapse high-level timeline, and I'm going to be updating that. I almost have everything done, and I'm just going to upload it, and we'll have a whole new things added to it so we can see what is going on. And for those people who donated to support the site, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's get into the economic collapse news, and we're going to go head out to Cyprus right now. And we know that Cyprus has been under capital controls. They just received a $115 million loan disbursement from the IMF. Again, they're going deeper into debt. But what's amazing is they relieved the capital controls on the people. Cyprus abolished maximum daily cash withdrawal limits from bank accounts on Friday, a year after it imposed capital controls to prevent economic meltdown. Yeah, well, they did it a year later because now they stole most of the money. Most of the people are so poor they have nothing left in their accounts. They're really not worried about a bank run at this time. But again, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, they told everyone in the country one night they went to sleep, they woke up, and all of a sudden they were only allowed to take out 300 euros per day. And again, this went on for over a year. They stole 47% of their savings, replaced it with worthless bank stock, and now they're continually getting more and more debt from the IMF, and this is just going to make it worse and worse in Cyprus. Yes, it seems great now, but because they're receiving the money, but just look at Greece, just look at France, just look at Spain, just look at Portugal. All these countries are having problems. Now, the Greek Supreme Court rules that bank deposit confiscation is unconstitutional right now. And again, the IMF, the European nations are going to have to override this somehow to get to the deposits. But the Greece Supreme Court ruled that the seizure of bank deposits due to debts to the state without previous notice was against the Constitution. And it's good that they have something like this, but we'll see. Most likely something will happen. They'll override this, and they will go into the people's accounts. Now, in Britain, what we are seeing there is the overall economy grew less than the initial estimates from last year, raising another warning sign about the country's economic recovery. What they're seeing there is that their economy is actually not growing the way they thought it was going to grow, and their unemployment is continually going up. Their unemployment is around 7.2%, and the Office of National Statistics, they released the data on Friday saying the UK's gross domestic product grew by 1.7% in 2013, which is 0.1% less than expected. So they are having problems, and we're seeing this throughout Europe. These countries are in debt. They have huge amount of problems, and people just can't get by. The governments are trying to do everything possible, but they continually take on more debt. More people are being laid off, and again, this is a no-win situation. And in the UK, they are looking at a housing bubble at this time, and it might pop. Again, Lord Turner is saying if interest rates have returned to 3, 4, 5%, then a lot of people are going to be struggling and housing will be in trouble. Lord Turner elaborated that targeted reforms to limit credit-fueled growth were needed to prevent a repeat of the 2008 financial crisis. And I hate to say this, but every country is going to implode with housing, with their economy. It's the same thing we saw in 2008, except this time it is extremely much worse because of all the printing, all the austerity, all the debt the countries have, and right now there is no more wealth left in all of these countries. They have more debt than they know than they actually really need to have at this point. And when this economy comes down, everything is just going to go with it. And before this happens, the central bankers need to start an event to get the war started, to take eyes off this economic collapse and off of them and put it on another area. Now, Italy is having a very rough time, and as we know, Venice wants to remove itself from Italy, just like Crimea did, and they're going around and they're going to sell 1,500 non-essential government cars, and these are cars like Maseratis, Jaguars, Alfa Romeos, BMWs, and they're getting rid of all these cars to bring in revenue to help the government at this time. Now, of course, the Eurozone is out there, and they're telling and they're reporting, just like we saw back in August of 2013, if you remember, that everything is fine. Consumer morale brightens in March. Everyone believes there's a recovery coming. Everything looks fantastic. Unemployment is skyrocketing, but everyone feels great. And of course, the optimism in Eurozone's economy brightened more than expected in March as European consumer confidence showed its strongest monthly jump in nearly 5 years. And again, this propaganda we saw in August of 2013 because they really thought they were going to have that Syrian event. They really thought they were going to get the war started to cover up what has been going on. And that whole thing did not go through. The British people did not want more. The American people did not want more. And they didn't know what to do. So they had to take the backdoor exit and go with the disarming of the chemical weapons, and this is what they did. But this wasn't their goal. Their goal was to remove Assad, and it's the same goal they have now, and they're ramping everything up to push this agenda, and this is what we're seeing happen right now. Now, a report was out there about people spending and how much people are saving, and personal savings rate picked up by the smallest possible margin, rising from 4.2% to 4.3%. And the reason why this is rising is because of the 1%. Really not the rest of the country. They are having more and more into saving. They are making more and more money while the rest of the country is getting poorer and poorer. And what they did for February as a result of a downward reversion in January, they revised all the numbers because they had the spending in January from 0.4%. They revised it down to 0.2%, and we see this happen quite often where they go out, they revise the numbers, and they don't really mention it anywhere, but everyone believes that, oh, look, spending was up in January. Oh, look, it's up in February. Well, of course it's up. They just revised the number lower, and they said this number's higher, so it really makes everyone believe that spending is is getting better. But we know that's not the case because, as I discussed in these reports many, many times, there are layoffs, there are store closings, and if you haven't heard them, just go back 1, 2, 3 reports, and I pretty much mention it all the time. But what we're seeing is more and more stores coming out and saying, you know what? Because of weak spending from the consumer, because of the economy, we can't keep these stores open at this time. And GameStop is out there, and they're planning on closing 2% of the stores in 2014. That's 130 locations. The everyday guy or girl living in their parents' basement who can't find a job because there's no jobs out there, graduated from college, want to play a video game, they're working in a part-time job, can't even afford to go out and buy these games at this time. And they're closing 130 locations because the expected results for the fourth quarter completely missed, and the key to this was because of poor holiday sales, and the poor sales continued on through January and February. So really, what are we seeing? We're seeing that the American people are completely tapped out. They have no money. They are not spending it on things they really don't need. This is what this is telling you. This is what you are seeing right now. This is what's leading up to this collapse. And when you look back, you're going to go, oh my God, yeah, now it all makes sense because look where we are and look what was happening all throughout this time. And this is what we've been discussing all of this time. And this is why you need to get prepared, because if you notice, it's getting worse and worse as time goes on. How is it getting worse? Layoffs getting worse. Store closings getting worse. It's not getting better. And this is what we're seeing. And they realize, as the central bankers, the government, they know that it is not getting better. They're running out of excuses. Yeah, they had the weather, and we know it wasn't the weather. It's really the economy. It's really the people not working. And they realize, what are they going to do in the spring? What are they going to do in the summer? What are they going to do in the fall? They are running out of excuses, and they know it. And this is why they need this next event to take all eyes off of the central bank, all eyes off of the government, and put it on Syria, Iran, North Korea, Russia, China. It really doesn't matter, because in the end, all of these players are going to be involved in World War III. Now again, they need to keep this illusion up a little bit longer, and this is what they've been doing. But again, they have surveys out there saying that consumer confidence is up, and right now what we're seeing is UMich, University of Michigan survey. They're showing a 4-month low in consumer confidence. And again, we have all different surveys coming out there. They have other surveys showing that, oh, look, the consumers are very confident, they see hope, and now we hear another survey saying, no, there is no hope, and this is the 4th month in a row that people still don't see hope. So again, this is all complete made-up data all around us to keep us in the illusion. Some of this data comes out and actually shows us that there are problems, but most of it is made-up data. And right now, as we know, the unemployment numbers, the inflation numbers, GDP numbers are all manipulated, made up, lied about. And again, I've been saying this for quite a while, and all of a sudden, the Census Office survey scandal grows as inflation stats are faked. And they're looking into the Census Bureau, Philadelphia office, and what we're seeing there is that unemployment rate was they were fabricating the unemployment rate and the data. It was also filing false information about inflation in this country. And guess what? Do you really think that's the only thing, and this is the only area that they've been faking this? No, this is everywhere, because what we are seeing makes no sense of what they're reporting. Does it? It doesn't to me, because if you go back last year or the year before when unemployment was higher, how was retail sales better? So their numbers are showing that unemployment's going down, and sales are getting worse. It makes no sense. They are lying. And now it's coming out that they've been falsifying data, they've been fabricating data, they've been telling lies about inflation, unemployment, GDP. They're recalculating, trying to make these numbers fit the illusion. And now they're getting caught. This is what always happens. And now all of a sudden you will see the corporate media start reporting like, oh, these numbers might not be real because look what's happening. And again, the alternative media, have been saying this for a very long time, giving you this information and showing you that these numbers are not correct. I mean, I feel it, you should feel it, and I'm sure you do. You know there's something wrong. You know there's something wrong when your friends are telling you, I've been sending out my resumes and I'm not getting any answers. Well, if unemployment is all around us and people are getting jobs and the numbers are coming down, they should be getting responses. They should be getting jobs. Now, we understand the U.S. government, their effort is to get these weapons out of the American people's hands. But there's been pushback. I know New York, California, Connecticut, Maryland, all setting up these draconian gun laws, trying to get the weapons away from the people. And if you ever look, these are the very highly populated areas, because this is where they're very worried, where the outbreaks are the riots, the people rising up, crime, when this whole system collapses. And these are the areas that they're worried about. They're worried about the major population with weapons going to Washington and saying, you know what, we had it with you. It is time to make a change. And this is why they're trying to disarm all people. If you look in Ukraine, the government out there, the acting government, is trying to disarm their people because they have elections coming up and they don't want people with weapons saying, you know what, we don't agree with this, and this is why you're seeing this. But in certain states like Connecticut and now New York, you're seeing the police, the sheriff office saying, you know what, we're not going along with this law. And on March 26th, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association announced that the New York State Police had decided not to enforce this ill-conceived, unconstitutional portion of the New York SAFE Act, the 7-round magazine limit. This puts New York State Police in line with the sensible path taken by the New York Sheriff's Association and many local law enforcement agencies in not enforcing the magazine capacity limit. And you're seeing this in Connecticut, you're seeing it in New York, you're seeing it in California, and this is saying, listen, the people don't agree with these laws because you are infringing on the Second Amendment. And when you infringe upon this, it is null and void and cannot be the law in this state. And again, this law cannot be above the Constitution. And we are seeing this, and the people are pushing back at this time. Now, we understand that we had this LAX shooter, and we know that the TSA always wanted to be armed, and right now TSA, and of course they want to arm TSA, they want to, DHS, they need people armed there, FEMA, they need people armed there, TSA, they need people armed, because this is all part of the government police force, which is detached from the military. They control it, they can control the population, they have most of the local law enforcement in their back pocket, giving them grants, money, tanks, weapons, and making them compliant with their procedures. And they're doing this on purpose to keep control of the system, and they're allowed to work with local law enforcement. But the U.S. Transportation Security Administration has asked for armed law enforcement officers to guard airport security checkpoints at busy times, a proposal that comes months after a shooter opened fire at a crowd in California at a checkpoint. And you can see all these false flags and all these types of shootings are done on purpose to get their agenda moved forward. Again, this mass shootings that you see is to disarm the American people. This particular one is because they wanted the TSA agents armed and ready. And you can see they are just pushing and pushing these agendas forward, and you're going to see them push them even harder as time goes on. Now, countries are starting to get worried. They see the economic situation. They understand that this cannot be sustained. So, we have Russia and China already buying gold hand over fist. They're just purchasing. we don't see the United States purchasing gold. I look everywhere. I can't find anything that says the United States is purchasing gold whatsoever. Again, I do not believe the United States even has gold anymore, because when countries ask for their gold back, they tell them no. And if you actually had the gold, you would just give it to them. And instead, they say no, and they go out looking and raid other countries to find gold to give to the other country that's requesting it. But we're seeing the government of Iraq actually purchasing 1.56 billion worth of gold. This is the biggest purchase in 3 years. And the government there realizes, Shinzo Abe, he realizes that the Abenomics is not working at this time. This is a no way out situation. They are stuck. So what do? No, they've been printing money, so that's not what they're doing. He is turning to gold. It's amazing, isn't it? He is purchasing gold as much as he possibly can at this time. You know why? Because gold is real money. It has value. This paper with ink has no value. And when people start realizing this, and people see the dollar around the world collapsing, where countries are not holding the dollar in reserves, Russia's not holding it, China's not holding it, most of these countries saying, you know what, I don't think I want to hold these treasuries anymore either, we are going to see people fleeing from the dollar. And a lot of countries have started switching their reserves already from the dollar into other currencies. And this should scare every single person, because the United States, the central bankers, are continually maintaining the empire in the Middle East, in Africa, in Thailand, in Ukraine, and it is getting very, very difficult to maintain what is going on. Now, yesterday I mentioned that there was a UN vote, about 100 countries that voted on if Ukraine was legal or not. And again, this is not legally binding. This is a vote. The UN Security Council is actually the one. But yesterday I mentioned that there were countries, and you have to see the breakup of the countries of who voted for what. So the 100 countries that actually voted for this was USA saying that Ukraine annexation, the Crimean annexation was not legal, was USA, Canada, the European Union states, of course, and some other countries in Asia, Latin America, the ones, the private Western Central Bank, they're the ones they control. And Russia, on the other end, was Russia, Belarus, Cuba, Nicaragua, North Korea, Syria, Sudan, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and the other countries that say, you know what, we're just going to abstain, we're not going to really do anything with this, and that was Argentina, Brazil, China, Egypt, India, Iraq, Pakistan, South Africa, and China. So you can see what is happening here. They were trying to prove to the world, and again, the private Western Central Bank countries that are controlled by the central bank all voted yes, this is illegal, because they really wanted Ukraine with Crimea, and they didn't get that, and now they don't know what else to do. And of course, they're implementing more sanctions now, and they're not going to implement sanctions on the entire country of Russia. Maybe they will eventually, when they figure out how they can reverse this and blame it on Russia for the collapse, but again, we'll have to see how that happens. Now, Russia, since all these sanctions are coming about, the Russian bank shut U.S. accounts to protect its Russian clients. The Bank of Russia says it will only work with rubles right now, and only in Russia. The bank also says it's taking measures to protect its clients. The bank says it told U.S. banks it was closing correspondent accounts. The bank also says it will meet obligation, doesn't need support. And the bank said thanks Russian President Putin for the support. So they are now taking measures. They have their own payment system coming into play. They're getting rid of the other accounts and only keeping everything internal, dealing with China, dealing with North Korea, dealing with Iran, dealing with Syria, dealing with all the other countries besides the United States. And we can see what is happening at this point. Now, Russia right now, since Crimea is not part of Ukraine at this point, Russia has started the preparations for terminating bilateral agreements with Ukraine related to the status and operation of the Black Sea Fleet. So we can see how that's being pushed up. And what's happening in Ukraine, it seems like the opposition is having a little problem because of the murder of the interior minister. A lot of the people, there are riots and things going on, and the opposition in Ukraine might be in a little bit of trouble at this point. We'll have to see how this plays out. But again, this is a puppet government that was put into place. And again, there are no elections at this time. These people were already designated for these spots before this even took place. Now, the West wants the UN to look into human rights violation against Assad. They want to go further back in years now. They're trying to dig up anything they possibly can because, again, we have to remember what they're doing. Their whole entire tactic is to remove Assad. They do not want him in power. They need to get him out. They are running out of time. Why? Because the presidential elections come up mid-2014, and I think that's around July of this year. And they know they have this timetable. They realize what's happening. The economy is faltering. They have these elections. They can't have the people elect him again because that would pose a very big problem. And they would say, uh-oh, the people support Assad, so how are we saying that the people don't want him there? And this is going to be a big problem. And this is why they're pushing all of this propaganda. This is why they're building up for the next event. And along with that is the faltering economy. They know they cannot maintain this much longer. The illusion is getting more and more difficult. And if you looked over the past couple of days, they've been pushing gold down, 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 because this is an indicator that there is a problem in the economy. And they don't want anyone to realize this until they are done with what they are doing. And this is why you've been seeing the slam down of gold. And again, there will come a point where they will not be able to do this. Gold will start rising, and you'll know when it is, because all of a sudden you'll look and you'll see gold up 100, gold up 150, gold up 200. And this is when you better start purchasing if you haven't, and because it's going to then skyrocket and it will be out of reach after that. Now, we understand that they are preparing to strike into Syria. They tried to get Turkey to send military across the border, fire missiles into Turkey to say, oh my God, look, Syria's firing on us, we have to invade. And then the United States would say, oh my God, look at that, they're firing on one of our puppet government nations, and we need to go in there. But that plan was foiled, just like the Geneva II talks, just like the chemical weapon false flag. And right now, the president is considering sending even more sophisticated weapons. He's looking into sending over the man-portable air defense systems, the man-pads into Syria. And again, I'm going to tell you right now, they're already there. All the military assets are sitting there in Jordan. This is all just fluff to make people believe like, oh, he's thinking about it. They have everything prepared just like they had back in August of 2013. There is absolutely no difference. They have the CENTCOM base ready. They have the military assets in Jordan ready. They have the troops ready. They have all the military assets were shipped. These man-pad weapons are already sitting there. They already tried to sneak some military assets into Syria, but they were killed off before they reached their goal. And this is not anything new. This is the same exact thing they were doing back in August of 2013, but this time I don't think anything's going to stop them. And to prepare for this false flag, I mean, we're seeing 9 nuclear base commanders fired from the U.S. Air Force over a cheating scandal, and we have been seeing many, many military officers, high-ranking officers, being removed. Again, remember what the president said. He's more worried about a nuclear weapon in Manhattan. Now, it might not be Manhattan. It could be in Manhattan. But again, he is out there saying this, and we have to look at everything that's going on. All the official intelligence, if you want to call it that, or propaganda, to make you believe that something's coming. They've been building this up. And what's very interesting at this point is this Malaysian airliner, which went down, which nobody can find, and they keep pointing to the ocean with 200 objects, 300 objects, oh yeah, and there was no black box, there's no tracking. It just seems a little outrageous, and of course what we're seeing is the United States put the Atlantic coastline from New York to Charleston on high alert. They're looking for cruise-type missiles or low-flying planes at this point. They have heightened security measures, began with Israel's increasing threats against Iran. And then we have to take a look at this. Israel is threatening to invade Iran, right? Israel closes all its embassies because of a pay problem which was going on for 2 years. Doesn't really make that much sense. We understand that their intel is saying that Assad has chemical weapons, Assad has biological weapons. We've been seeing the cyber attacks from the Syrian Electronic Army. We understand that all the exchanges now have kill switches to protect them from an attack. We can see how this is being prepped up. We also understanding that Syria now is a launch pad for terrorists that will be coming back to the United States, and some have already come back to the United States, and they're breaking off into lone wolf groups, which makes it very hard to track them. And a lot of them have the technical know-how on how to build bombs. And they were talking about dirty nuclear bombs because there's a lot of missing nuclear waste from medical isotopes that gone missing, which they cannot find. So we understand they are building this propaganda. Now, they've been telling us that Iran right now has the ability to create these dirty bombs or a nuclear weapon at this time. So we can see how this is all building up. Now, what's very interesting, and this is coming out from Dabu7, who reported this, and there was also another investigative reporter called Chris Bolin, who also made the discovery that using plane spotters, they figured out that Israel purchased the same exact Malaysian airliner and stored it in Israel at this point. It's exactly the same except for the serial number. Now, this just tells me that they were up to something, that this plane wasn't hijacked in the way everyone thinks. It was hijacked and brought to a different location where no one would find it again. It might have been stripped down or whatever. And people are going to believe that it crashed or something happened, and now they have another plane standing by that looks just like it. Again, people are going to believe that this plane was hijacked and then used in this attack. And you can see what is happening at this time. This is a complete setup for the next false flag event. Now, the U.S. believes someone other than Iran is planning an attack. Gee, you think? You think they've been building up Russia? They've been building up Syria? They've been building up China? Right now, I'm going to go with Syria. Doesn't matter who it is. All the players are going to be the same in the end. But it seems like they've been pointing to Syria. Israel might have had other ideas because they really wanted to get into Iran, and this would allow them to do it because they realize if they flew that plane into the U.S. and hit something or something did happen, what we would see was Israel attack Iran. And the United States does have an agreement with Israel to back them up and go to war with Iran. That is one scenario, and this is what Chris Bolin is saying in this article, and we can see that scenario happening. Now, we also can see the other scenario with Syria, where they are using chemical, biological, or any other type of cyber attack, or all of them at the same time, to create this event in the United States. So there are a lot of things going on because the central bankers, they realize this is the end game and they need to get something started. They need to push this agenda forward. And if they don't do it now, their window of opportunity is going to be missed. And the collapse will be blamed on the central bankers and the U.S. government. This is why they wanted to get this done in August. This was their whole entire plan. I mean, they shut down all the embassies the beginning of August. They said they travel advisories everywhere. They were evacuating everyone to make it believe there were terrorist attacks everywhere. And then all of a sudden in August, there was a false flag event with these chemical weapons in Syria. And again, of course, the Fed was out there at the same exact time saying we're going to taper, the economy looks great, the economies look great, until the incident happened and the economy didn't look that great anymore. Now, here we are. And again, at the same time, President in August was saying the real estate market was bouncing back. Europe was saying they were in this great recovery. If you remember, just go back to that time. It's exactly what happened. And now we're seeing the same thing. Europe is saying they're in this great recovery. The president's saying real estate's rebounding. The Fed has been tapering. They're saying that we're seeing this great recovery. All of this is the same exact thing that was happening back in the fall of 2013. But this time, the event is a go. The event is ready, and nothing is going to stop them this time because they have it figured out, because they realize they can't have an event happen anywhere else. They're going to try with many false flags like we just seen. We'll probably see a couple more until they say, you know what, it's time to do the main one. And this is why everyone needs to be prepared. This is why we all need to stock up on food, water, medical supplies. Make sure you have weapons. Make sure you have toiletries. Invest in silver. Invest in gold. If you can't, stick with the food and the water. And this is why and don't forget batteries, lights, candles, because we don't know which areas are going to be blacked out with this power grid cyber attack and a physical attack. We really don't. And you have to be prepared for your accounts to be frozen, and you need to be prepared for all of this. And this is why we've been preparing. You should have been preparing all along. If you haven't, you should start now. You do have a short window at this time to get some supplies. But again, if you have medical issues or things like that, just have medicine standing by, extra diabetes, heart, anything that you need. And again, as I always say, if nothing happens, what do you have? You have extra food, you have extra water, you have extra medication. You're going to end up using it. You have extra batteries. You will end up using all of this if nothing happens and all of this just goes away, which we know it's not. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.